Hello and welcome to the What If South is Up podcast, where we talk about the ups and downs of creating worlds from scratch and all the misadventures we experience along the way. In a nutshell, how to wing it like an author. Hi, I'm Derrick Hall, and I'm the creator of the Crimson Prophecy series.
And I'm Xtina, the author of, well, I haven't named my first book, nor have I finished it, but we'll call it Book 1 for now. And we're really excited to be here today.
So, Xtina, what are you reading or watching right now? What's caught your interest lately?
Well, I love to watch, but I'm actually going to talk about some of the things I'm reading right now. One of the things I'm really interested in, I just started the other day, is something called Circles, and it's a YA. I think it feels YA right now, and it's written by Ruby Standing Deer, and it's giving me a Clan of the Cave Bear vibes to start with. We'll see where it goes.
Oh, okay.
Second thing I'm reading is The High Mountain Court because it was highly recommended, and because I'm a glutton for punishment, I'm actually reading another book at the same time. This one is Those Who Run in the Sky by Aviak Johnston. And this one's interesting because it is set in Alaska. It's not modern. It's set in ancient Alaska, and it has to do with a few of their mythos and mythologies. And I'm learning a lot about how their hunting practices and their dating practices, and that's what's interesting about it.
That actually sounds really cool.
And what are you reading?
I can't read multiple books like you do. I get one fiction and one nonfiction, and that's the best my brain can handle. So, in that vein, I am reading a memoir by one of Hitler's bodyguards. It's actually called Hitler's Last Witness, and it's a really interesting take on somebody who was right there, delivering the reports into Hitler's hand every single day, and it's a really interesting look at that, and a side of things that you don't normally get to see. But on the fiction side of things, I am reading He Who Fights with Monsters, Book 7, by Shirtaloon, which is an obvious pen name, but that's fine. I don't care. The books are amazing, and I'm addicted. I am so addicted to these books. They're super good. It's a lit RPG series, and I can't get enough of it.
You are into that stuff.
I am. Guilty. I had a D&D session last night. It's just kind of what I do.
And I think folks will see that, rather hear that as we go further into our podcast and we play our little game.
I'll admit it. I'm a nerd. So, what libation have you chosen this week?
Well, today's choice isn't really a choice. It's what was left in the fridge and on the counter. It's the last of my vodka, and it's in some, mango pineapple juice concoction and thing. It's what I had left.
Okay.
It's not bad. It's doing the job.
Hey, whatever works, right?
What's working
at the
for
moment,
you?
At the moment, I have a whiskey sour.
You're so much more together than I am.
I'm not. It's freaking bottled margarita mix and $15 bourbon. I do not have it together. This is not fresh limes and lemons and Bookers. This is the cheap shit, but that's fine.
Well, winter's coming, so I'll be looking again for my perfect Bloody Mary recipe. So anybody want to send any suggestions in, that'd be great.
I made Gordon Ramsay's Bloody Mary recipe one time. That was actually really good, and I don't like Bloody Marys, so that might be one to look up.
Yeah, he is interesting and kind of hot.
Oh, the truth comes out, ladies and gentlemen. She's into the retired footballers. Got it.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about playing a game?
I love games.
All right. Well, you want to play a game with me called What If, where I will give you a question about your world, and you pretty much have to answer it. Completely theoretical, of course.
It's almost like this was destiny. It's like the name of our podcast.
Well, I mean, there's no accounting for coincidence.
It's like it was planned.
Yeah?
Let's explain to everyone listening what we're thinking and what we're doing.
Okay. Well, we have a spreadsheet full of all kinds of questions. Everything from medieval mass transit to dragons the size of house cats, and everything in between. And the general idea here is that me, being the D&D player that I am, I'm literally going to roll a d20. And whatever number we land on is the question of the week. Does that work for you?
That works perfectly.
All right.
And I do want to mention to everybody listening that both Derek and I are fantasy authors.
We are
Our worlds
indeed.
are completely different, as you'll find out. But we do focus on the fantasy, and I like to throw a little bit of sci-fi seasoning in there, here and there. So those questions will be based in that kind of genre.
Arcane punk, isn't that what we decided yours was? At least leaning toward?
I think it's called solar punk.
Ah, solar punk, that's right.
Yeah.
Me, I'm more of a traditional sword and sorcery type of fantasy setting. Figure if I'm going to write a book, I ought to write what I know, right? I said
yes.
write way too much in that sentence.
That's gonna help. I'm making stuff up from scratch, sort of. So this is fun.
All right. Number 11, according to the fates. What if there was no form of currency in your world?
Do you want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. All right. So, no currency. As a little bit of background on my world for those who are not familiar, which is going to be most people since the book isn't quite out yet. My world is a relatively traditional fantasy, like medieval fantasy setting. It is, for the most part, like beyond chapter 2, it is contained to a singular continent called Ketra. And that continent is divided and ruled by a number of independent city-states. Those city-states conduct trade with each other because resources from different regions and biomes and that sort of thing are needed. But for the most part, it is independent kingdoms on a singular continent. Within those kingdoms...
No, I was going to ask. So, and you're probably just about ready to answer it. Those kingdoms do trade with each other.
Yes, they do. The majority of trade is done by sea because it's reasonably easy to sail around the outside of this landmass, and the majority of the population is along the coastlines or along the rivers. So it is easy enough, anyways, to put stuff on a boat and ship it to the other side of the continent without having a whole lot of danger other than weather, given the time of year, that sort of thing. Each of these independent city-states has its own version of currency, but there is an overarching version of currency that is valid everywhere. Without that, I'm not entirely sure what would happen. So I've encountered this a little bit, and I've explored it a little bit because going into book 2, which I'm drafting right now, I have an ancient kingdom that has been revived and populated literally overnight. And they have no structure, no currency of their own, nothing like that. So, for the most part, in that situation, what you're left with is a barter system. So, you need 2 chickens and a stew pot. What can you trade me? And that works fine until people run out of things to trade. So without currency, there's something is going to fall into that gap, whether it be shiny rocks, grains of rice, fingernail clippings, whatever it happens to be, something is going to fill that gap eventually.
So there's 2 things that come up when I'm thinking about your world in this.
Mm-hmm.
First is that capitalism exists to a point. I mean, it has to, right? I mean, no city-state has everything it needs. So it needs things, not just wants. It needs things from the other city-states, correct?
Yes. I consider it more of like a cooperative oligarchy, even though that's not a thing. It's a very it's a very limited society. There is a massive aristocracy, and then below that, just about everybody else is either poverty level or below or enslaved. So there's not really a middle class. You have the ruling class, the aristocracy, the overwhelming wealth. You have a thriving trade in people, mainly non-human races, elves, minotaurs, centaurs, that sort of thing. And other than that, there isn't really a whole lot going on. Most of your agriculture, your commerce being like the market stalls, your craftsmen, that sort of thing, are either going to be lower class or indentured or enslaved. At least in those city states.
So 80% of the wealth is held by 2% of the people. Huh, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, it kind of does, doesn't it? Fascinating. Didn't do that on purpose at all.
The other thing I wanted to point out or talk about was, you talk about, you're right, that bartering can only go so far. I mean, somebody has 2 chickens and, to trade, but that doesn't help somebody that has 30 chickens.
Exactly.
So the person has, 30 chickens, 2 more chickens are worth nothing. So currency kind of sets an even playing field.
It does. It is so an item of uniform value.
Yes.
So if anyone's ever taken like a freshman level economics class, your first week of lectures is going to be about equivalent value. So
yes,
currency or coin or whatever form of monetary item that is valued in a society is going to be the basis for that economy. And like there were points in ancient China and in Japan where rice was valued more than gold, and rice was the currency. You would pay for things with a weight of rice. If something holds enough value, it can be the currency. It can be blades of grass, it can be, like I said, fingernail clippings, it can be whatever it needs to be to fill that gap. Something has to fill that gap, because eventually people are going to run out of resources to trade.
So, a way to warp this question for your world is, well, currency has to exist. The way to warp the question is what different currencies exist, and you have multiples.
I do. The individual city-states each have their own, and then there is an overarching one that is valid in all regions that is only used for trade between the city-states or for people traveling.
Is your currency paper or coin?
Coin.
Coin. Heavy shit.
Yeah. You have a lot of money, you're going to need a way to carry it and people to guard it.
Interesting.
In the vein of the classical, medieval style fantasy where, you have the payroll on a wagon and guards and all of that sort of thing. Mainly because paper currency, by its very nature, implies the invention of a printing press, and my world does not have the technology of a printing press. It has handwritten, hand-copied manuscripts. And I didn't want that inconsistency. I'm a stickler for little historical details like that. Like having perfectly clear glass windows and sleeping on piles of straw do not go together.
Right.
So having printed money and handwritten manuscripts do not go together.
Your coins, if melted, do they have the same value? Is it the metal that's valuable or the pressing of it? And by the way, it's okay if you don't know the answer because that's part of what we're doing here. We're pushing each other.
I haven't really dug into it that far, but my gut instinct says that it is the process of minting the coin that makes it valuable. It is whatever is marked on that coin, not the metal itself.
Interesting.
Very much like our American coins now.
Yes.
The coin itself is not what's valuable. It's the fact that it has, whatever on one side and George Washington on the other, or Lincoln or Jefferson. So, Like I said, it's an economy of equivalence. Whatever is assigned value becomes valuable.
And what type of iconography would be deemed valuable on those coins?
It would really depend on where the coin is from. For each independent city-state to have its own, it's going to be more than likely something related to that city-state. Their largest item in trade, their ruler, something along that line. I haven't actually dug into it because I spent very little time actually in those cities with my main characters as of yet. So there's not really a need to dig into it for the book, but I have thought about it. And like, so say the city of Valis, which is the first city that Inara, my main character, comes to in this new continent. When she first encounters that city, it's essentially deserted. There's no need to dig into the currency. But in book 2, I'm about to send her back to that city, and it will more than likely create a need to dig into that currency. So with a city like Valis, their main trade is going to be grain because they are situated on the edge of the plains, and fish because they are also situated on the ocean. So I could see a fish on one side and maybe their ruler on the other side. He seems like a very pompous man. He claims divinity. Something like that would make sense to me. A different city would probably have something else. If somebody deals in timber, I could see, a tree on one side or an axe or something like that, and something else on the other. It just kind of depends on where it is so that you can identify the individual coins. As for the overarching coin, it's no longer in production, but it was originally minted by the Unified Navy about 150 years before my main story took place. And that involves a ship on one side and a soldier on the other.
Interesting.
If that answers your question. I tend to ramble.
I like the ramble.
Well, that's good. Most people don't.
We're here to ramble.
I feel like I'm in the right place then. What about you? What about your world?
So this is an interesting idea. When it comes to money or currency, there's a couple of things in my world that need to be understood. First of all, it's the hoarding of wealth is considered taboo.
Oh, interesting.
So one person, having a 2%ers or 1%ers, if you will, just wouldn't exist. It just can't. It just wouldn't. It's very taboo. It's about as taboo to be ultra wealthy as it is for somebody to live in a house with 70 cats. It doesn't go right.
Don't talk about my grandmother like that.
The other thing is that I'm working real hard to create a world where it's advanced enough. There's magic. Mm-hmm. It's fantasy, I promise. There's magic, I promise everyone. Oh, and with that said, is that I've got this world 90% built in my head, but if my book comes out in, whenever it comes out, 6 months or a year, and something doesn't match what I'm saying today, my book wins. But this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to create this society where things like college are just, they're free because they're better for the whole society as a whole. Nobody goes without food and nobody goes without clothing because, well, that's just what humans need to survive, to live, to have a good life. So why would we have a society that doesn't provide those types of things? So it's not a utopia per se. I'm just trying to create this egalitarian world, where money is not the focus. And I'm running into trouble because, I want my main character to be able to go get outfit for a ball, for, a dance. And I'm running into this problem with currency. Is like, she's from a very distant part of the nation, and that small little community that she comes from, they wouldn't have money at all. It's just not what they would do. They would trade in furs, or they would trade in tools because that's what they need. Mm-hmm. But when she goes into the quote unquote big city, right, she's going to need some things that she doesn't have. So I'm actually running into a problem of, okay, how does she get those things? Now I've got two choices in my story. I can just have her go somewhere and get these things and not even talk about money at all. or I have to come up with a whole concept to explain how she gets it.
Right.
And I need to decide what's really important to the story.
Right. No, that makes sense. So, forgive me for interrupting, but it sounds to me like her hometown village area is more of like a tribal society where everyone takes care of each other. Is that correct?
I would say yes, except it is more modern. So they have steam engines, okay? They have running water, they have all, those types of things. But their mentality, their culture, is not about who's got the most money or who's going to pay for what or anything like that. It's just here's the things I want and, what can I trade to get them and again, wealth is taboo.
Right.
So
right.
nobody's doing anything just to make money.
Hey, no, that's.
I mean, a good analogy would be, if somebody in the village had, 30 reindeer hides, and there was other people in the village that were cold, that would not go over well.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I feel like that's kind of the basis of community even today in a modern setting is it's not a community unless you take care of each other. Somebody needs something, you help them. And
Right.
that's a value that's largely been lost, particularly in the larger metropolitan areas. Country bumpkin like me, you can go to New York and walk down the street and wave at everybody and smile and say hi, and nobody's going to give you the time of day. And it's just really something that's been
So
lost.
it is something that's been lost, and that you say that because there's magic in my world, there's portals, and you can go from one area of the country nation to another in a blink of an eye. Because you can do that, people don't have to live in cities where they work. Okay, so I don't have New Yorks where people have to work and live at the same place. They just go to wherever they want to live in the country. They want to live in hot weather by the beach, that's where they go to live. If they want to go live someplace that has 4 seasons, that's where they live. And then they go to this center, right, to either for university to learn or, for manufacturing type of jobs. But I'm trying to decide how this sharing of necessities is going to be handled.
Well, you mentioned portals. I feel like in our world, somebody would be charging a fee for that.
Right. And I would actually have to say the highest valued commodity. In my world, everybody has a magical ability. Okay? And that is the highest value commodity, is what somebody is going to use their magical ability for to help their community and society.
Okay, so that's their bargaining chip, essentially.
To a sense, I mean, if there's somebody is able to port people from one place to another, that's just their job. They get up in the morning and they just go do it. They're not going to take money to port people. That's how they're giving back to society, is by providing this service. And then they get everything they need and everything they want. Well, I would say everything they need, things they want. I'd probably try to find a way that they can work extra for that. But there's no McMansions. I mean, it's a world where everyone tries to work for the betterment. Now, like I said, it's not a utopia. There's still people that are going to be people. Humans are humans all over the place. And that's where my conflict comes in, sort of. So when I'm talking about currency, this is actually something I'm pretty well stuck on. I don't want there to be a king currency, or I just want there to be a way to trade/barter without it being medieval.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point, and it's a different way of looking at things because, like I said with my world, everyone is used to there being some form of currency. And in the absence of that, it's going to manifest itself in one form or another. But if you're not used to that, it would make sense that some other system would develop because you don't have that basis in a monetary economy.
And this is why in fantasy it's coin and in sci-fi it's credits.
Pretty much. Pretty much. Yeah, that's about the only difference. Coin, credits, and spaceships.
So to answer the question, there are parts in my world, there are places in my world where there is no currency. It makes no sense. And there's places in my world where I'm going to have to invent some form of currency, whether that be credits,
right,
or whether that be printed paper, or whether that be something else. That is something I need to work on. In my world, your magical ability is called your obligation. So as long as you use your obligations for good, your credit, and I'm using air quotes here, your credit is in good standing.
Interesting. And that's really a big part of what I love about fantasy is that every story you read, every book, every world is very different. It can feel similar. You know, medieval fantasy can start to get a little bit repetitive sometimes, but there's always something different, something just enough different to make it interesting. And it's that way with any storytelling, really, fantasy or not. But that's part of what I love about it is everybody has a different twist, and I really appreciate that.
And I'm really loving this new emerging or having emerged genre of the urban fantasy. You know, being able to put the fantasy in what we, everything we do today.
Yeah, no, urban fantasy is one of those things that's kind of been bouncing around in the back of my head for like 20 years, and I'm kind of sad I didn't jump on that a long time ago because I would be a very rich person right now.
That's the goal.
I had a dream once. So, is there anything else we want to say on the currency topic?
No, I think that we pretty well covered it.
All right. Well, I think that will conclude our game of What If for this week. Do you want to share something that you may have Googled that would have put you on a government watch list? Or that you would tell other people, don't Google that?
I actually don't have a don't Google that story this week. Sorry, folks.
No.
My story is actually, I decided in my book that I want to introduce the Native American / indigenous mythos of Thunderbird. So I was like, well, what are the different names of Thunderbird in Native American culture? And so I went down that rabbit hole for a little bit today instead of actually working.
Whoops.
So that was interesting, but it's not going to put me on any FBI watch list.
I'm on so many watch lists at this point.
You know, I'm just going to say that I dropped the ball on this homework assignment, so I'll bring something better next time.
Oh, no, that's fine. Like, research is 80% of writing a fantasy story. You have to know how to make the world feel grounded or nobody's going to be interested. And a lot of that involves making sure that the names are right, the wounds are described correctly. You know, that person didn't bleed out too fast or too slowly or whatever the case may be. So no, I completely understand.
But the good news is I did decide on a name for my Thunderbird, so that's good news.
Oh, hey, that's
That's
a
a
win.
win.
I struggle with names on so many levels.
That's a hard one, is coming up with the names.
The names are probably one of the hardest things I've had to deal with in writing my books.
And hence my book has not a title yet.
My first book had a working title from somewhere in the neighborhood of like chapter 5 or 10. It had a working title. And I really liked it, and I thought it was going to be perfect. And then I finished the book, and it didn't fit. And I'm like, what do I do now? I have to redo this title, and I have no clue what it's supposed to be. And I eventually came up with something, and I actually really like it, and it does fit. But there was that couple of months while I was editing and proofing and doing all of that where I'm just like, Untitled Ketra Project number 1.
This is why mine's called Book 1.
Right. And so on my end, I have quite the list of don't Google that topics.
Thank you.
But
You can what's the word I want to look for? Make up for my loss of fulfillment.
Oh,
of
yes.
this.
I will shoulder your portion of embarrassment along with mine.
Thank you for being more eloquent than I.
I wouldn't go that far. You're being a little too generous. Stop. But, so probably my most recent one that I'm a little embarrassed to admit, but I'll do it for the listens and the views. I had to Google how to flirt without sounding creepy. And I'm embarrassed by that. I don't read anything even bordering on romance. I don't like my books spicy. I don't care what TikTok thinks. And I don't like I don't do it. I don't like romance. I don't like any of that. And yet, I find myself writing a world with real people with real emotions who end up getting involved with other people, and I have to write flirty scenes. And the first one that I wrote was intended to be flirty and came off as really creepy.
Who said it was creepy?
About 30 different people told me that this scene was way too forward and extremely creepy. So, yeah, I had to Google it and figure it out, and I still haven't gone back and revised it because I'm afraid to read it again. So, that's a thing. And I feel like I've managed to go from creepy flirty to more flirty banter in my subsequent encounters between emotionally involved characters. But that one, it bothers me. I want it to be a certain way, but I cannot figure out how to make it not creepy as hell.
You're adorable.
No, I'm just terrified of my own writing. That's
and
all.
Do you have another one?
Another one? Is that not enough? I'll hit some bullet points. All right, fine. You win. I have had to Google organic explosives. I have had to Google spear wounds. I've had to look up images, which I made the mistake of leaving this tab open and scared the crap out of myself the next morning, of advanced human decomposition, among other things. Because I have an entire city in my second book where every person in that city dropped where they stood and were left there in the sun baking for months. I needed to know what my characters were going to be walking back into.
Yeah, months is totally different than years.
Yes. Yeah, I need to know, and I'm a very visual person. Images help me with things a lot better than verbal descriptions. So that is in my search history now, and I'm either a criminal justice student or a serial killer, according to the government. So there you go.
Thank you. Those were awesome.
Yeah. Well, you do what you gotta do to create things. You know, you try to breathe life into something, and sometimes you have to do embarrassing things. Or write embarrassing things.
I want to invite anybody listening to comment wherever you're listening on your most embarrassing Google thing this week, and we will share that in our recording.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We're always open to suggestions. If you have a suggestion to add to our roster of what-if topics, as it would apply to a fantasy world, whether that be ours, that of a future guest, or a generic fantasy setting. If you want to describe a setting for that question, feel free. Go ahead and comment that too. We're always open to suggestions and ideas.
We are open, and yes, we are open to ideas, mostly because we know we'll run out soon, so we'll need your help.
We're creative, but we're not that creative. It has limits.
We have limits.
And there's only so much bandwidth on the brain.
Oh.
So, that being said, Xtina, if you would like to share where folks can find you online?
You can find me, all of my socials. I'm uniquely Xtina. Uniquely Xtina. I'm on all of them that I can find. That's my website, Facebook, TikTok, all the things. Uniquely Xtina.
Well, you got lucky. I didn't have that consistency when I made mine. I can be found online just about everywhere at @dhallauthor, or on Instagram it's a little bit backwards. It's author_Derrick_Hall, and that's DERRICKHALL. That should find you just about anywhere. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and DerrickHallAuthor.com.
Right on.
The website will link you to everything, and I post my updates and stuff there. I have a novella, which is currently available on Amazon, entitled The Trials of Tiarsis, and my novel, Ketran Odyssey, releases November 10th, also on Amazon, if you want to check either one of those out.
With the plans that we are going to be forever on podcasts, and we're going to be really good at this, that was November 2022.
Thank you for that detail.
Yeah, I just hate it when I listen to podcasts and they're like, this will be available on October 17th, and it was 5 years ago.
Right? I've had a couple of things like that pop up. And yes, that is my oversight. So you're very correct in mentioning that. That is, Ketran Odyssey is available November 10th, 2022. We want to thank you guys for coming and hanging out with us. It's been a lot of fun, and hopefully we didn't ramble too much. We will be back with the next episode shortly, and we hope you join us there too.
I hope to see you guys next time, and this was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Absolutely. Hope everyone has a good week. Thank you for joining us on the first episode of What If South is Up podcast. We look forward to many more in the future, and if you are a fellow fantasy writer and would like to join us on the show, please send us an email at whysouthistup@gmail.com. That way we can get in touch and get the process started.